There is a growing problem that is affecting Montana's forests. Lodgepoles and ponderosa pines are rapidly being destroyed. The cause of this problem is no bigger than a grain of rice. My name is Ginger Singer, and this is my documentary on the mountain pine beetle.
Mountain pine beetle attacks all species of pine, both native and introduced, and it's the most widespread destructive bark beetle that we have in Montana. Last year alone it killed almost 4 million acres of pine across our region. Following the 1910 fires and the need for wood and fiber for the railroads and the mining in Montana, a lot of trees were either burned from the fires or harvested for the railroad and the mines. What that did is it produced large, vast expanses of even-aged lodgepole pine forests, which are the most high hazard to losses or attack by mountain pine beetle. We also have another problem that's happened recently, and that is that we had a period of warmer and drier weather than we had previously. That was the precursor for the mountain pine beetle outbreak. So we had the vast amount of host material available, and what we needed is something to start the outbreak. And that, we believe, was the warmer and drier weather. The female initiates the attack, and as she's attacking or drilling a hole through the outer bark into the inner bark of the cambium, she's also releasing a pheromone to communicate to male mountain pine beetle to come and mate and join her in her attack. And then once that mating is completed, then they release, or she releases, an additional aggregation pheromone that brings in both males and females. The females begin to mine and make long egg galleries, laying eggs in the inner wood or the cambium, specifically the phloem of the cambium. And it's the larval feeding in that phloem tissue that girdles the tree. But also all bark beetles introduce a staining fungus they inoculate the tree with, and that fungus clogs the water conducting tissues. So in order for the beetles to be successful and kill the trees, the larvae mine the trees, girdle the trees, and the blue stain fungus clogs the water conducting tissues. Now, individual trees, some are more vigorous than others, and those vigorous trees are able sometimes to pitch out incoming bark beetles. And how they do that is, as the beetles attack, the tree produces enough pitch to push it back out the hole. Often the beetle is actually killed or caught within that pitch mass and dies.
When I look out on these dying seas of lodgepole pine forest, sure, at some level I feel sad because you see this green landscape, literally turning red, and then as the needles fall off, it just turns dark. But then out walking among those trees, you realize that there are other things going on, so that the understory beneath those lodgepole pines is pretty lush. There are a lot of forbs, there are a lot of grasses growing in places that the lodgepoles have blocked the sunlight to, and which were formerly pretty much a desert. The other thing that's happening is I've seen more woodpeckers of all kinds, flickers and blackback even woodpeckers in the forest around Butte, and they're certainly benefiting from all those tasty bark beetles and the larvae that they peck out of these dead and dying trees.
Right now, you can't stop all of the beetles in the middle of an epidemic, short of cutting down all the trees. There are so many beetles out there, and there are still a lot of susceptible hosts. So Montana as a whole isn't doing anything per se, but individual entities are managing it on their lands, like the Forest Service or the state, and private landowners are also dealing with it on their own lands. We don't want this to happen again in 100 years. The best way to prevent a mountain pine beetle outbreak across the landscape is to create a mosaic of size and age classes of trees. So in the interim, in the next 100 years, we need to be thinning, we need to be managing our forests so that we have different size and age classes that aren't all susceptible at one time and die out like what has happened here.